deal in place for their second-round pick to go get Brandon Aiyuk. Aiyuk doesn't want to go there. Doesn't want to go there. He wants to either go to the Commanders with Jane Daniels or he wants to go to Pittsburgh. If not, just stay here.
Okay. Well, so I feel like the options are pretty straightforward now. If those are it, the Niners aren't going to deal with a team they don't get something that they want back, and I don't even know what that. I mean, if they want Kendrick Bourne and a pick, okay.
Who knows what the Niners want?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Apparently, they wanted a first-round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, so who
maybe
knows?
They're asking for too much.
Jimmy G, who might not make the Rams roster,
might not make the roster,
but I don't know, but I know this, like. They basically told him, like, go out there. At least it feels like they've gone out there and said, find who wants to trade for you. Now, in the Tyreek Hill situation, they gave up multiple picks, the Dolphins did, and we're ready to break them off, right? Multiple first-round picks, and here's, X amount of $1 million. Here you go. In this situation, it doesn't feel like the market is as robust as maybe I anticipated in terms of teams saying, I think there are teams that will pay him, but then the question is, are you also willing to surrender a draft pick and pay him? That's the double whammy, right? It's like when the Niners acquired Dee Ford, giving up the second-round pick, which was essentially a late first, and giving him all the money. So in this situation, okay, he wants to go to Washington or Pittsburgh. Well, those teams, their offer isn't as good as what the Niners want in return. So the Niners have said, we're not trading you there. We will trade you, it sounds like, to Cleveland or New England because we like their trade package, and you can get whatever deal it is that you're looking for. Or I'm assuming they have some deal on the table that he doesn't feel is adequate. You could stay here with that. Or the third option is you play on your fifth-year contract,
right?
Which is fully guaranteed for $15 million or $14 and some change $million. I mean, those are your three options. And so I guess to a degree, like Mayoko has been saying for 2 or 3 days, the ball is in his court amongst those three options.
Well, here's what Mary Kay Cabot from the Cleveland Plain Dealer said yesterday about Cooper's standing, Amari Cooper's standing in Cleveland.
There is no impasse between Amari Cooper and the Cleveland Browns right now. Amari is in good standing with the Cleveland Browns because they restructured his contract. Mm-hmm. He's making his $20 million base, which is now fully guaranteed. That was one of the changes in the restructure, so that he didn't have to go into camp without a guaranteed contract. And then they gave him $5 million more in incentives that he should be able to make based on his previous production. So he basically got a $5 million raise come in this season, and then they were planning to probably revisit an extension sometime during the season, maybe after the season. Amari is loved here, so let's make no mistake about that. The Browns love him. He loves being here. He said the other day, last week, that he would love to finish his career here. But the problem is, over the long haul, the Browns probably don't want to pay him, more than the $25 million he's set to make this season. And if they're going to invest that kind of money, sort of close to at least the $30 million threshold that these elite receivers are making now, they would rather do so with a long-term contract for a young player who's in his prime at the age of 26. Now, why does that not make sense for the 49ers to do? Well, they've got a lot of big salaries. They've got a lot of offensive weapons that they're paying. And if they don't want to go to 30 or higher than 30 for Brandon Aiyuk, then maybe it makes sense for them to do this if they got something in return that could be a plug-and-play situation for them. And that's what Amari would be.
All right, Mary Kay, what would the Browns give up for Brandon Aiyuk?
Well, if Amari is going, then I don't see the Browns giving up their first-round pick. They're not going to want to do that. They haven't had a first-round pick in 3 years from the Deshaun Watson trade. So that one is probably staying here. Mm-hmm. I would say that the starting point then would be the second-round pick, and then maybe you would ask for a few other things for your former first-rounder, in addition to Amari. I would probably go with maybe a mid-round pick or two.
So, Chasky, if you're telling me I could get Amari Cooper and the second or third round pick for Brandon Aiyuk, and you don't want to pay Brandon Aiyuk, and look, I'm going to say this again. My preference is to keep Brandon Aiyuk. I want Brandon Aiyuk on the San Francisco 49ers. I think he's a really good player. But if you're telling me that I could get Amari Cooper and a pick for Brandon Aiyuk, and I get that Amari Cooper's going to want new money down the line, well, you know what? You're playing on a one-year deal. Help us win a Super Bowl, and you're going to get compensated elsewhere. I'm doing the deal right now for Amari Cooper.
Yeah, but Cleveland's not going to do the deal unless they have insurance from Brandon Aiyuk that he would sign that deal.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. Right? There's no doubt about that. And I'm sure that, and that's one thing he wants to go to Pittsburgh, not Cleveland. But again, if the Niners can do it and Aiyuk agrees to that, I do it in a heartbeat.
So one thing that I don't think that we've kind of explored long enough is like the team building aspect. Like we were thinking, like, I think most people were thinking, all right, Brandon Aiyuk's the guy that's going to stay. And then next offseason, it would be sayonara to Debo or Kittle or someone else, right? Like Dre Greenlaw, whatever, some combination of all those guys. What if he just decides, like, you know what? I don't want to go to Cleveland and I don't want to go to New England. And the Niners stand pat with what they have. And they say, hey, look, play on your fifth-year option. And we promise we won't franchise you. Now, how does that help the Niners? Well, if he leaves in free agency, you do get the third-round comp pick, which isn't the worst thing in the world. It's not the greatest compensation, but it gives him some freedom and it gets him, playing on the fifth-year option. Does he love it? No. Is he risking stuff? Absolutely. Like, I acknowledge all of those things, and it's probably the least likely of all of the paths that they could go.
If I'm Aiyuk, I want that in writing. That you won't franchise me.
Trent had that.
Yeah,
Trent had that in his contract, right?
I wanted it writing in the contract, like, hey, you can't franchise me.
Yeah, that's basically what he had when they traded for him. Right. Remember, they said, like, we will not franchise you when you become a free agent. Exactly. So I don't know. Those things are rare, but maybe that's it. But if they move Aiyuk, I would be very surprised if we didn't see almost an immediate extension for either Lenore or Aaron Banks or whatever, because there are a line of guys. What?
Charvarius Ward.
I'd probably sign Lenore before Ward. Like, Lenore is a guy who was a middle, late-round pick who hasn't made a lot of guaranteed money. He's playing without any guarantees whatsoever. He's made nothing in his career. If you get him this year before he really explodes, and I think he's going to this year as an elite player, I think he can be a Pro Bowler this year. Like, the price tag now is significantly cheaper. So there's a team building question of, like, hey, is it really smart to have $70 million, $65 million invested into wide receivers when I could pay one of my corners maybe before the market explodes for him, get maybe my left guard signed long-term who I drafted and have developed internally? Like, there is something to be said for maybe it's best to spread some of that money around, acquire a draft pick, acquire another player, pay some of these other young. I don't know. I mean, I would prefer keeping Aiyuk, but I do see, like, when you're balancing your roster because you have so many good players with their hand out, it's not a slam dunk that I have to pay Aiyuk.
Well, this is interesting because, and I hear what you're saying. You don't want to put $60 million in a receiver room. That's your philosophy. That's fine. Deommodore Lenore is 25 years old. I want to keep him here too. Charvarius Ward's 29 years old. I don't mind having him, but I'd be a little weird. But he's a really good player. If I could get him a 2-year deal, great. I'd give him a 2-year deal. But a lot of these players that I'm looking at, like Eli Mitchell, can't stay healthy. I don't know. He can walk. Jalen Moore, I'm not paying.
What about Aaron Banks?
Aaron Banks will get taken care of. Aaron Banks, I believe, will get taken care of. The left guard market
is very expensive.
It is very expensive. But
you're
when
seeing
you want to
guys
keep
getting
them,
$17 million a year.
And look, you know what? Shanahan does have a philosophy when it comes to offensive linemen. He'll pivot off an offensive lineman. Like, we thought Laken Tomlinson, man, we should pay Laken Tomlinson. But you know what? They didn't. Well, and we haven't looked back. We haven't even brought up Laken Tomlinson.
That's a great example of someone where they acquired a player who was a really good Pro Bowl level player. They let him walk in free agency, and we were like, what the hell's going on with Aaron Banks? They've redshirted him basically for 1 year. Like, that's what they're thinking they're going to do with Pearsall with one of these two receiver spots.
And this was interesting, and I think we slept on this. This was on the Rich